By evening, Ruth summoned Grace for a serious talk in the parlor. The older woman's voice shook with both anger and sorrow. If by next year, your 24th birthday, you fail to bring a fiancé, I'll put you out of my house. Once you're 26, I want you gone, for I was only a little older than you when your father married me. Grace's heart pounded, tears threatening to slip. She recognized that her mother was doubling down on the threat. She tried to reason. Mama, forcing me to marry might lead to regret. Don't you see marriages that collapse because people jumped in blindly? But Ruth remained unmoved. Better a collapsed marriage than an unmarried daughter rotting here, she spat bitterly. Shaken, Grace excused herself, fleeing to her room. She woke the next morning with a dull ache in her chest. The memory of her mother's ultimatum hovered like a storm cloud. Marry soon or leave this house by age 26. She glanced around her small bedroom, the only refuge she knew. Its cream-colored walls bore faint pencil marks from her childhood, little doodles of houses, flowers, and her father's name. Though her father had died years ago, his warmth lingered in these walls. She felt tears threaten, but swallowed them down. That afternoon, determined to avoid further scolding, Grace sought out her friend Faith. They met under a huge mango tree by the outskirts of Umuoma, a place they frequented as teenagers. Grace recounted her mother's threat to evict her if she remained single by 26, a mere 3 years away. Faith listened intently, occasionally nodding. When Grace finished, Faith sighed. Your mother's approach is harsh, but I see her fear. She doesn't want to die without seeing grandchildren. She regrets that your father died young and never got to hold them. Grace folded her arms. I understand, but she disregards that marriage isn't a quick fix. She wants me to do what other girls do. I don't even know what that entails. Should I stand on the road soliciting men? Faith smirked. No, that's not it. But maybe show more availability. Attend social gatherings, greet acquaintances more kindly. Men rarely knock on a door uninvited. Our culture often expects the woman to at least be accessible. Though resentful, Grace conceded that she rarely socialized. Her mother's constant pressure had driven her to withdraw. All right, Grace said, voice quiet. I'll try stepping out more, but only in ways I'm comfortable with. A few days later, while shopping for vegetables at the local market, Grace bumped into Daniel again, the young man she'd met briefly at the vigil. Daniel noticed her subdued mood. He gently prodded. Grace found herself confiding her mother's ultimatum. His eyes widened sympathetically. I've heard of such pressures before, but forcing marriage rarely yields lasting peace. Surprised by his understanding, Grace felt a flicker of relief. Here was someone who neither mocked nor belittled her predicament. They parted with an unspoken warmth, promising to keep in touch. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Grace occasionally met, sometimes a stroll by the farmland, other times chatting under that same mango tree. Each encounter left Grace slightly more hopeful. Perhaps a genuine bond could form without the manipulative rush her mother demanded. Yet she remained cautious. This was a budding friendship, not a guaranteed wedding announcement. She refused to feed her mother false hopes by bragging about Daniel. She wanted authenticity. Meanwhile, Ruth grew more restless. She saw no immediate engagement ring or formal introduction of a suitor in her household. She ramped up the pressure, bringing new wedding invitation cards daily. Look, Grace, this one is your age mate from secondary school. She's already expecting a baby. Ruth would toss a gilded card on the kitchen table. You want to remain the only spinster in your set? Grace would grit her teeth, retorting that she refused to be guilt-tripped. The tension sometimes escalated into shouting matches. Once, after a particularly vile exchange, Grace spent the night crying in the backyard, gazing at the star-filled sky. Papa, If only you were here, she thought. He would have balanced tradition with compassion. In the midst of this turmoil, Daniel quietly became a comforting presence. He never promised marriage outright, but his companionship felt steady. Occasionally, he'd walk Grace back from an evening errand, praising her calm nature amid her mother's hostility. Their closeness prompted gossip among neighbors. Some whispered that Daniel might be the suitor, others speculated Grace was simply leading him on. A swirl of rumors surrounded them, fueling Ruth's inquiries. Yet Daniel's sincerity kept Grace grounded. She wasn't alone in facing the noise. One humid afternoon, after returning from a short trip with Daniel, Grace found her mother rummaging through her phone messages. Outraged by the intrusiveness of privacy, Grace snatched her phone back, eyes blazing. "Mama, you have no right," she cried. But Ruth shot back. "I must see if you are serious about any man or just wasting your youth. Don't forget my warning." Grace's despair peaked. If her mother stooped to such extremes, what next? She locked herself in her room, trembling with frustration. That evening, she confided in Faith about the intrusiveness. Faith sighed. "Your mother is crossing lines. Maybe you should consider moving out for peace." Although unsettled by the notion, the idea took root. At 23, many women in Umuwama still lived under their parents' roofs until marriage, but Grace's circumstances felt uniquely toxic. If she couldn't abide the constant meddling, leaving might preserve her sanity, even if it meant minimal resources. She toyed with the plan quietly, unwilling to spark a final confrontation yet. That Sunday, at a friend's small gathering, Daniel noticed Grace's distracted air. He cornered her gently. "Is everything all right?" She hesitated, then admitted, "I'm considering moving out. Mama's forcing me to marry or leave anyway. Maybe I should be proactive." Daniel's face clouded with concern, but he nodded. "I won't pretend to know the best route. If you do move, at least let me help you settle in a safe spot." Grace felt a wave of gratitude, yet the question hung heavy. Would leaving be a betrayal of her mother or the only path to freedom? She dreaded the heartbreak in Ruth's eyes if she walked out, but the mother's harshness gave her no room for a mature, slow approach to love. Tensions reached a boil on an evening thick with humidity. The windows of their small house stood open, inviting precious airflow. Ruth had just returned from a distant cousin's wedding ceremony, wearing a bright wrapper and a deep scowl. She slammed the invitation card on the kitchen counter. Grace, who was slicing vegetables, jumped at the sound. "You see this, Grace?" she began, voice laced with bitterness. "Another girl younger than you, married and pregnant. Meanwhile, you—" she shook her head, exasperation evident. "I've had enough. Next month, you turn 24, and not a single man has come knocking with bride price. I warned you. By 26, if you remain unmarried, you're out. Maybe I'll speed that up if you keep ignoring me." Grace steeled herself, glancing at the clock. 8 at night. Darkness enveloping the windows. She took a slow breath. "Mama, I'm not ignoring you. I simply refuse to marry blindly. I have someone, Daniel, who might be a prospect, but we're not ready to leap into marriage just to satisfy gossip." "Daniel," Ruth spat. "That boy who roams the streets selling farm equipment?" She waved a dismissive hand. "No stable job guaranteed. This is your plan? Some uncertain love fling?" She demanded that Grace produce him formally for introduction. "If you can't guarantee an engagement before your birthday, pack your things." Her words dripped finality. For once, Grace felt a calm clarity. She set the knife down, turned to face her mother. "Then I'll go, Mama," she said quietly, chest tight, but voice steady. "I'd rather leave than continue this daily torment." Ruth's eyes flashed. She stomped out, muttering curses about wasted years raising an ungrateful daughter. Grace's heart clenched with heartbreak. Though it felt freeing to declare her readiness to leave, she never imagined their bond would crumble like this. She locked herself in her room, tears escaping. Bella's father was gone, and now her mother seemed bent on pushing her away. Is there no path to peace? The following morning, a weight lifted from Grace's chest, replaced by determination. She confided in Faith. Mama's ultimatum might be her final word. I can't endure more. I'll move out soon. Faith nodded sympathetically, offering to help gather items for a modest new lodging if needed. What about finances? Faith inquired. You have enough saved? Grace shrugged. Not much. I weave baskets for small income, but it's meager. Daniel offered help, but I won't depend solely on him. I want to stand on my own first. Faith squeezed Grace's hand. You're brave. I'll support however I can. Just be cautious. The moment you leave, your mother's criticisms might intensify, but do what you must. Within days, Grace began discreetly packing non-essential belongings. Clothes, personal knickknacks, leftover weaving supplies. Each item she tucked away carried memories, some sweet, others overshadowed by her mother's demands. She wept silently, acknowledging the heartbreak of leaving the only home she knew, but it felt necessary for her sanity and dignity. Daniel, upon hearing her plan, offered a small corner in his aunt's compound, an empty single-room extension that used to store farm tools. It's humble, he said gently, but safe. Auntie can watch out for you if I travel. Though reluctant to rely on a suitor, Grace felt relief at having a roof. She planned to pay rent once her basket sales resumed. She also resolved to keep her relationship with Daniel cautious, ensuring she didn't simply jump into marriage to appease her mother's timeline. A week later, Grace decided to announce her decision to Ruth, rather than leave in secret. She felt her mother deserved some honesty. Early in the morning, before the sun fully rose, Grace found Ruth in the yard, sweeping dust. The air smelled of dew and acrid tension. Grace said, "Mama, I'm leaving tomorrow. I've found a place. I won't wait until my 26th birthday. You said you'd throw me out anyway, so I'm making it easier for everyone." Ruth froze, broom mid-stroke. Slowly, she turned, eyes flickering with disbelief, then anger. "You're leaving this house? Where to? With that boy Daniel, I presume?" Grace hesitated, then nodded. "He found me a small room near his aunt's place. I'll pay my way. I can't endure your daily threats. Let me live freely." A swirl of mixed emotions played across Ruth's face. Shock? Hurt? Then a spasm of prideful fury. She flung the broom aside, voice rising. "So you'd rather humiliate me than be an obedient daughter? After all these years of feeding and clothing you, you repay me with desertion?" She glared at the ground as if seeking words strong enough. Grace felt tears rising. "Mama, I love you, but your demands are suffocating. I'm not refusing marriage. I just want to marry on my own terms, not from fear of eviction or deadlines. This conflict helps neither of us." For a moment, Ruth's mask cracked. Her voice wavered. "I only wanted grandchildren before my bones grew weak. I see time racing, my youth gone. I dreaded losing you as well." Grace's heart clenched. She realized her mother's harshness stemmed partly from sorrow. "Then trust me," Grace pleaded softly. "Pressuring me into a forced union could lead to misery. Let me find a stable path." Ruth's eyes moistened, but anger overshadowed regret. With a defiant shrug, she turned away. "Do as you wish," she spat. "When it fails, don't come begging." The next dawn, as roosters crowed, Grace quietly packed the last of her items into a borrowed cart. Bella, confused by the flurry, clung to her mother's wrapper. Some neighbors watched from doorways, guessing the nature of the rift.
Faith offered a supportive smile, holding Bella while Grace loaded baskets and clothes. Ruth remained inside, refusing to appear. Grace felt a pang of sorrow. Not even a farewell hug? Perhaps this was better. No final screaming match, just a silent acceptance. She whispered a prayer for peace, then guided the cart down the dusty road. The early sunlight glowed on the path ahead, a symbolic hint of new beginnings. At Daniel's aunt's compound, they settled in a modest one-room extension. The walls smelled of old dust, the single window letting in faint light. Humble, but safe. Daniel arrived later, offering a small pot of stew for dinner. Grace thanked him, but insisted on repaying him once her basket sales resumed. Meanwhile, Bella soon adapted to the new environment, enthralled by the aunt's goats wandering around. For the first time in months, Grace breathed easier, away from daily condemnation. During an evening meal, Daniel mentioned softly, "You know, I haven't asked you to be my wife because I respect your process, but I do see a future with you, if you'll have me." Her cheeks warmed, heart pounding. She appreciated his gentleness and lack of pressure. "Let's keep growing together," she replied, voice trembling with cautious optimism. 2 more months passed. Daniel's gentle courtship persisted. He never rushed Grace, but the closeness between them grew obvious. Even Faith teased that wedding rumors swirled around the town. One evening, under the glow of a single oil lamp in the small room Grace now called home, Daniel knelt awkwardly, presenting a small beaded ring. "I know your mother's demands overshadow everything, but I'd like to marry you someday out of genuine love, not pressure." Her tears welled. She whispered, "Yes, but let it be slow, thorough. I won't jump to a ceremony tomorrow." He grinned, slipping the ring onto her finger. They shared a quiet moment, Bella asleep on the mat, the future glowing with promise. The next morning, they told Daniel's aunt, who beamed with delight, offering prayers for their union. A hush of contentment settled. Grace had found a partner who respected her pace, who valued her beyond tradition's ticking clock.